Good morning, Indiana. Welcome to Who's Left This Week, the unapologetically progressive Sunday morning political news show for our state. Our opening theme is by Hoosier singer-songwriter Leslie Nuss, and my name is Scott Aaron Rogers. I'm broadcasting from Bloomington. Lots to talk about this week. President Trump in China. We've got updates in the Iran war, which is kind of at a untenable stalemate that, if it is not resolved soon, will continue to wreak economic damage on the entire world. Corruption abounds in the Trump administration, and it abounds in Indiana as well. We'll get that in the second half of the show. Got a couple of great guests here with me to discuss all of that and more. But first, you know the routine. This is an independent media project. We don't paywall content. We certainly don't have any billionaire benefactors. Only individuals like you keep this thing going. It is a foundational principle of Who's Left and the Progressive Indiana Network that we refuse to hide important information behind paywalls in the middle of a political crisis, even if that's not in our financial best interest. So please, if you find value in this work, and it is a lot of work, go to progressiveindiana.net and subscribe at the paid level. It's only $5 a month or $50 for the full year to help us build the infrastructure that will pop the right-wing media bubble in this state. And if a paid subscription isn't in the cards for you right now, that is okay. You can still help out by liking and sharing on social media, commenting, leaving reviews, providing feedback, and forwarding our content to your people. You get us when you can. Mostly, we just want you here in this community of Hoosiers dedicated to making this state and its government work for all of us, not just the elite few. Please join us. You can follow me on Blue Sky, Instagram, and Threads at whosleft.us, and on Facebook, TikTok, and YouTube at Who's Left. That is spelled HOOS Left. Progressive Indiana Network's handle is the full spelled out name on most sites, but on Blue Sky and TikTok, it's PIN Indiana. Please help us grow with a follow wherever you're at. Now, let's welcome this week's guests. First, a couple of returning guests to the Who's Left space, but first timers here on the Sunday morning show. Let us welcome first our good friend from Indianapolis, attorney and community advocate, Karla Lopez Owens. Karla, welcome to the show this morning. Thank you for being here with us.
Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
I appreciate you spending part of your Sunday morning with us. Introduce yourself to the folks briefly who don't already know you.
Okay, I will. So the last time I was on your podcast, I talked a lot about my bid for Marion County Clerk of the Court. The elections happened last week or maybe 2 weeks ago. It's honestly been a blur.
What is time?
Pardon?
What is time?
What is time? It just like all rolls into one big mush. But it was a couple weeks ago, and I think just the days kind of blur into the other. But it was a really amazing race. Maybe we'll talk about this later, but we came quite close to winning. We were 2,000 votes away, which I know sounds like a lot, but when you take into consideration we got 35,000, 122 votes, and then my opponent got 37,122, maybe roughly. Anyway, we were about 2,000 votes apart. But I'm transitioning back into work, into activism, and we'll talk more about that here later. I'm in Indianapolis, but I was born in Mexico, and a lot of my perspectives are based off of that upbringing. So the working class upbringing, and I'm excited to be here with you this morning.
Again, so glad to have you. A very serious, accomplished person slumming it with us jokers here on a Sunday morning. Hey, speaking of jokers, welcome back to this space. Again, first time here on a Sunday with us, our good friend, Reece Axel-Adams. Reece, I give you a hard time, but Reece is running for State House District 53 over there in the Anderson-Pendleton area, and brings a Gen Z perspective to politics that we certainly need in this area, or this era of gerontocracy. Reece, welcome to the show. Oh, you're muted, sir.
I always love it when that happens. Howdy. So I wasn't actually really planning on doing this here, but since you brought it up, me running for State House, um, I actually have, I guess, a little bit of an announcement, which is I'm actually going to be withdrawing from the race. As many of you know, I know, but it's for good reasons. I promise you that. As followers of mine will know, I've been battling a pretty rough battle with mental health over the past 6 years now. And I'm finally at sort of a turning point in my journey, and I've come to the realization that I need to heal and I need to focus on myself. As I always say, you can't mow your neighbor's lawn before you're mowing your own lawn. Um, so I'm not going away from politics. I'm still gonna be here making, as John Lewis would say, good trouble. But yeah, it's been an interesting journey, and I think it honestly gives some really intriguing perspectives.
Well, Reece, whatever you decide to do, we are here to support you, and we value your voice. And for folks in the Anderson-Pendleton area, Democrats are going to need a candidate. You got about 6 weeks to caucus in for that.
Well, it's actually just the Pendleton area and then Hancock County, and
I
so
see.
I'm in talks with the party leadership over there about finding a replacement.
All
Well,
right.
good,
Well,
good for
keep
you.
us
I mean,
updated.
yeah, sorry, Scott, but good for you for coming to this decision. That's one of the things I admire most about your generation is just how cognizant you are of these things of, I'm being honest and true to myself. And before I move any further, I'm going to go ahead and, draw those boundaries. And good for you. I commend you for that. It's really hard. I mean, politics is really hard. So I'm excited to keep working with you,
Thank you.
throughout the
Thank
year.
you. Thank you. Not to diminish anything that you said, but I think we're kind of like this because we have to be, because of the world that we live in. I know this isn't on our schedule, but you all know who Harry Enton is, right? Over at CNN, the guy who was way too excited about his job. I was watching like a super clip of some of his reporting on the American people's confidence in the economy, and it was, I mean, the numbers not good. But then amongst my generation, amongst Gen Z people, the numbers it almost sent me spiraling just into sort of this pit of despair because so many of us don't feel like we really have a future. And so I think we sort of were forced to be honest with ourselves and draw those boundaries, because if we don't, we don't survive, we don't thrive, we don't do what we want to do.
Reece, I'm glad you mentioned it. I'm not glad that we have to talk about it like that, because it is depressing. And really, our first this leads right into our first story, because we're going to talk about President Trump's trip to China this week and sort of the economic fallout of that. Let us begin. And so, before he even left, much to your point here, Trump in an interview was asked if he thought about Americans' financial pain and if that is motivating the Iran peace talks. And, you know, part of the reason Trump was going to China was to maybe ask for some of their help and moving things along. Trump says, I don't think about Americans' financial situation. I don't think about anybody. Yeah, we know, right, buddy? U.S. inflation hit 3.8% in April, its fastest pace since 2023, driven, of course, by the high energy costs since the U.S.-Israel attack on Iran in late February. Gas is now averaging over $4.50 a gallon, higher here in Indiana. Food is up more than 4%. Airline fares are up more than 20%. His own officials can't even get their story straight on relief when it comes, or when it even comes. Now, Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State, says Americans should feel very fortunate because other countries have it worse. Some comfort. You know who has it great? You know who Trump is really thinking about on the economic front is the people he took with him on this trip to China. He arrived in Beijing on Wednesday with a delegation of corporate elites. Elon Musk was there. Tim Cook was there, who Trump calls Tim Apple still. Jensen Huang, the CEO of NVIDIA, was there. CEOs from Goldman Sachs, Boeing, Cargill, and more. I think there were 17 in all. Went with him to China to pay tribute to Xi Jinping and were greeted by 300 school children waving flags, singing songs, and jumping up and down in excitement. Put a pin in that. Eric Trump was also on the trip, the Trump Organization itself with a seat at the table. According to the Brennan Center, Trump and his family have pocketed an estimated $3 billion from business ventures since the beginning of his second term here, much of it from foreign governments seeking favor, like China, for example. So it was Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent who led the planning for this summit, not the Secretary of State Marco Rubio. So economics over diplomacy by design. What is likely getting ignored in this trip? Taiwan, China's nuclear buildup, AI security, North Korea, and China's role in Russia's war against Ukraine. So before we talk about the takeaways from this trip, Reece, you brought up the economy and your generation's feelings about it. How do you feel about the President of the United States saying, I don't think about the American people?
I mean, the cynical side of me says at least he's being honest. Like you said in your little opening monologue, we all know that. Like, he doesn't care because, one, he doesn't have to pay for gas. He doesn't really have to pay for much of anything because he's the president. And
I'm full of so much gas. Got all I need.
And this actually got me thinking about a more perfect union video that I recently watched about the really wealthy in New York. And there's this group. What's their name? But their entire thing is they're a bunch of really rich people who want their taxes to go up.
Oh, that patriotic millionaires?
Yes, I think.
Yeah.
And like the chairman or the whatever head of it was talking to the reporter, and he was like, when asked the question, so what if taxes go up 0.5% or 1%? Will you notice it? And he's like, no, it just means that a number in some bank account somewhere is going to be a little smaller. And I think, that's what Trump doesn't know the struggles of having to buy 7 gallons of milk when it's on sale, because when it's not on sale, it's, not in the budget. He doesn't know the struggle of only filling up your tank couple gallons to stretch that paycheck. He doesn't know these struggles, and so of course he doesn't think about them. He's been coddled his whole life.
Karla, listen. I know we're old enough to remember the George W. Bush administration, and we thought like our presidents couldn't possibly get worse from there. But I don't know. At least he cared enough to lie to us that he was thinking about the American people. With Trump, all doubt removed, right?
Yes, and I mean, you took the words right from my mouth, but I think this is just another example of the disconnect that exists within the current administration and, the president and the people that he keeps around him. He lies. He does lie, and it's not good lying, but I was thinking back on a trip. I went to Mexico last year at the beginning of the year during the first installment of the tariffs. And it was so interesting to me to see how the Mexican people reacted and how the Mexican people what their unfiltered opinion of the current president, US administration, was compared to some of the people here in the US that are still making excuses, trying to justify the inflation, the fact that things have not gotten better for working class people and they've gotten worse, right? And it was just such a stark comparison as the people in Mexico, they've been feeling the effects of these US trade policies for a really long time in a negative way, and the disdain, the not hatred, but there's a lot of
Animosity.
Animosity, yeah, animosity. And I think that what we're seeing right now with the current presidential administration, I think it's going to get a lot worse before it gets better. And until and unless people start to recognize that it's not people that look like me that are the enemy, but rather Elon Musk and all the people that he's taking to, that are part of his little posse.
Mm-hmm.
They're the real enemies, not people that look like me. Because at the end of the day, we all want the same thing.
Yeah, the rest of the world could laugh at us, point, roll their eyes, but we've got the world's largest military and the world's largest economy, and if this ship goes down, it's taken a whole lot down with us. Let's look at some of the fallout of this trip to China.
I think they do laugh and roll their eyes, but just not on the public stage. I mean, I'm sure that Xi and his inner circle, as soon as Trump left, just spent minutes guffawing and laughing and just dancing around like little school children over how excited they were because I saw. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, let's talk about the way that Xi and the Chinese rolled Trump this week. First of all, Xi opened this summit by warning that mishandling Taiwan could lead to open conflict. Trump said nothing publicly about Taiwan the entire trip. Then on Air Force One on the way home, suggested he might reconsider the approved $11 billion arms sale to Taipei after hearing Xi out. He couldn't even recall the Taiwanese president's name. On military intervention if China attacks Taiwan, a U.S. ally, he said, the last thing we need right now is a war that's 9,500 miles away.
Yeah,
we left Beijing.
Yeah, we have a war 7,200 miles away that we're perfectly willing to fight and perfectly willing to expend our munitions and.
Yeah, put a pin in that. We'll talk about Iraq or Iran. Iraq. What's the difference, buddy? Now, here in a second. But
Azerbaijan and Albania and Armenia.
Oh my God. Yeah. He can't keep these things straight. Again, you're supposed to be the president of the United States, my guy. But anyway, he left Beijing without a single concrete trade deal announced. That was the whole reason you're going there. Economics, right? He got a possible order for 200 planes from Boeing, a possible deal on soybean and beef purchases, a possible agreement to set up some board of trade. China's framing of this summit was, quote, constructive, strategic, stable relationship. Trump didn't challenge Xi at all on this entire thing, and I'm linking to a Substack piece from Dean Blundell in this week's show notes on Substack. Subscribe at Progressive Indiana Network, by the way. Trump described the CEOs going with him there as paying respects to Xi. She said, quote, currently, a transformation not seen in a century is accelerating across the globe, and the international situation is fluid and turbulent. The world has come to a new crossroads. He says, can China and the United States overcome the Thucydides trap and create a new paradigm of major country relations? The Thucydides trap, for folks who do not know, is this theory that a rising power displacing a declining power leads to war. And, it didn't even really occur to Trump that he was talking about us as a declining power. And then, like, later on, when he finally got it, he was like, oh, well, he was talking about when Biden was in charge. It was a pathetic display by the president of the United States, who said, it's an honor to be with you. It's an honor to be your friend. You're a great leader. Sometimes people don't like me saying it, but I say it anyway because it's true. I was particularly impressed by those children. They were happy. They were beautiful. Those children were amazing. Not the kind of thing you want to say, Don. If
Did
you've
they
been listed in the
remember
Epstein
to bring
files
enough
more
knee
than Harry
pads?
Potter was listed in the Harry Potter books. Karla, thoughts on Trump's performance in Beijing?
I've been thinking a lot about how Trump behaves when, not just like in office, but ultimately, I don't think he has a true understanding of the implications of these conversations, these deals, on the American people. And at the end of the day, I don't think he cares. The way that I see him operating is, he's this big child with a game in front of him, and he's just like moving the pieces as he pleases, and again does not care about ultimately, like, this is going to have real implications on us, on all of us, right? But none of that matters, because as long as he is moving the things around, with him being at the top, like, I'm the smartest, I'm the most strategic, I'm the best of the best, as it doesn't matter if he creates chaos along the way, so long as he's creating this legacy, for himself. I don't think he cares. So again, I think that's indicative, or like, this trip to China is just yet another example of how he views people like us in the bigger scheme of things. He does not care, does not know, and does not care.
Reece, and I'm going to come to you in a second. I do want to talk about the long-term effects of China's rise, and I also linked an incredible article from Big by Matt Stoller on Substack in the show notes, and we can't dig into it too deep because it is a big article. But what Stoller points out is that China is basically eating the world's lunch at capitalism. For all the talk about China being a communist country, they are out competing the rest of the world by with investment. The U.S. has fallen behind China, specifically because what the Chinese Communist Party is doing is running the same competition and intellectual property policies that the U.S. used from the 30s to the 70s, when we were, growing and had a big middle class and led the world, and you could raise a family on one income. We abandoned those policies in the 1980s in favor of financialization and monopoly, which benefits the very CEOs that Trump had on his plane with him. And China's even winning at AI. They haven't yet. It is true that the U.S. is ahead in terms of AI on chips, but China's making it up for it with efficiency and will eventually surpass us, because they've got 1,000 different competing labs pushing open source research, whereas the U.S. In AI industry is all pushed into 5 hyperscale corporations that profit from inefficiency. They are selling tokens. They're not selling performance. Reece, it must not give you a whole heck of a lot of confidence to be coming of age in an economy where the center of the economic universe is in the process of jumping ship. Capitalism is a parasite, and it is jumping off the American dog and onto the Chinese dog, as it were. And I don't know, like, part of me as an anti-capitalist is like, good, you take it. On the other hand, there will be serious ramifications for us because we have benefited from being the center of the economic universe.
Yeah, I'll sort of start this off by saying US-China relations is like the foreign policy that I'm the least educated on. And so, like, I don't think about it that much. I think, I think it's bad that China is, growing. I don't think, we should want a essentially dictatorial country that, doesn't treat the middle class, as they should. I mean,
their middle class is growing. Ours is shrinking. I mean, we're drifting toward being a dictatorial country if things stay at the current rate. Like, and to be fair,
fair, but like
we have like 4% of the world's population. It's not fair that we control such an outsized.
I don't.
portion
Yeah,
of the world
I
economy,
think
right?
I think the U.S. being the world police force and sort of the world hegemon is not what we desire, but neither is having China be that world force and world hegemon. Because one point I would like to make is that one way that China is able to grow at such a fast rate economically is that they have absolutely no workers' rights. There is nothing protecting workers. They treat their workers, I can't say like slaves because a slave is not paid and they're paid, but like they don't treat them right. I mean, I still remember when back in middle school, so that would have been like 7-8 years ago, when the story broke about how the Apple factory in China put up nets around the windows to stop people from committing suicide instead of, I don't know, improving working conditions. And it's like, I'm not a China fan, as it's obvious. And so I think it's dangerous. I think the entire situation is dangerous because with China, I feel as though there are less guardrails. Although you could argue here in the U.S. those guardrails are quickly deteriorating. But
Yeah, I guess, and before we move on, I have to sort of pick up the pace here. We're running behind. I do want to give Karla the last word on this. I mean, like, the solution is the end of all empires. Like, we need global democracy, right?
that's what the UN's supposed to be, but it's not. Because
Karla,
UN passes resolution.
Yeah. Karla, do you want to comment before we got to move on to the Iran war?
Yeah, I was just going to say, to the point that you made earlier, I think like you said, the US is a capitalist society, and the leadership that we have is evidence of that. They're willing to put profit over everything else, over everyone's well-being, and by any means necessary. And I think what we're seeing play out in real time is just the destruction of previously established diplomatic relationships that, for better or worse, maintain some sort of order in the country. And we're just, we're gonna keep, it's gonna keep getting worse before it gets better. Maybe we'll talk about the militarization of the police and how slowly but surely we're kind of inching towards this dictatorship-like society. And what we're seeing here with the policies from the current administration is facilitating, like rolling out the red carpet for that. So, but that's what I was going to say.
Yeah, it's like we're becoming more alike. China's becoming a capitalist hegemon, and America's becoming a police state. Not exactly the results we wanted.
No.
We do need to talk about Iran now. Ostensibly, one of the things that Trump was over in China this week to talk about was getting Xi's help with ending the Iran war, with opening the Strait of Hormuz. Now, Trump says he and Xi, quote, feel very similar on Iran. And according to Trump, Xi told him that he's not going to give Iran military equipment. That's a big statement. He said it today. Big statement, very strongly. So again, statements. I don't know if we have any solid commitments. So China doesn't sound like they're going to get involved in any way. We did find out this week that apparently the United Arab Emirates, however, were far more actively involved in this war, which is kind of at a standstill. Right now. Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi, speaking at a BRICS summit in India, accused the Emirates of being a, quote, active partner in the U.S.-Israeli war in Iran, and that they may have acted directly against his country. And that seemed to have been confirmed by the Wall Street Journal, who said that the Emirates have secretly been conducting military strikes on Iran, including an April hit on an oil refinery on Lavon Island that knocked it offline for months. Iran has responded with over 2,800 missiles and drones targeting the UAE, more than any other country, including Israel. Now, the Emirates tried to coordinate with other Gulf allies, including Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and Kuwait during the recent war. However, Mohammed bin Zayed, the president of the Emirates, wasn't able to bring them on board. The Trump administration has backed this push. Saudis struck Iran on their own without coordinating with the UAE, then pivoted to helping Pakistan with mediation. Qatar also considering striking Iran, but chose de-escalation instead. This snub by the allies sort of helps explain the Emirates' withdrawal from OPEC in late April and their deepening ties with Israel. Speaking of Israel, they agreed to a 45-day ceasefire with Lebanon, where they've been attacking southern Lebanon for the last couple of months. Military talks at the Pentagon are on track. This existing ceasefire had only been a ceasefire in name only, with both sides conducting daily small-scale attacks. So not more than a day after this most recent ceasefire was agreed to, still, Israel launches new strikes in Lebanon less than 24 hours later, striking at least 5 villages in southern Lebanon, where Hezbollah has been attacking throughout regardless. They have not been included in the negotiations. Let's look at where this thing stands right now. Currently, 78 ships have been turned back by the U.S. blockade, according to Central Command. Meanwhile, Iran has prepared to manage traffic in the Strait, meaning they're going to collect tolls and block any ships from U.S. allies from passing through. I don't know where this thing is at. It seems that the active shooting has stopped for now, but there is very much a stalemate. Things are log jammed in the Strait and log jammed in terms of negotiation. Karla, what is going on over there? Is there an off-ramp? How are we going to get out of this thing?
I hope we get out of this. Again, nobody wants this. Nobody asked for this. The American people didn't ask to be dragged into the horrors, that are being inflicted on so many people, so many innocent people, casualties of war. Like it's horrible. It's awful. And again, when we have a president that doesn't care and that is willing to do anything in his power to encourage the destabilization of forces throughout the world. I mean, I think he wants that, right? I in my how I'm analyzing this is there's the destabilization of not just here what's happening in the US, but what's happening around the world. And I think he wants chaos because I'm just bringing it back to the American people, how this is going to affect the American people. This is how he's justifying the laws that he's pushing to take away our rights. Again, I go back to the militarization of the police, the passage of now in Indiana, we can have the National Guard posted up, without unilaterally, we can have the National Guard go up. And
not to interject.
Sorry, one last thing, because the nationalization of the elections, that he said over and over again, and taking over elections. Again, it's just like little by little, he's chipping away at people's constitutional rights at the expense of so many folks like dying and being slaughtered in the process. So I don't know if like that answered your question, but I'm just like thinking back of how this is affecting me here in the US and the long-term implications of this, because it's going to take a really, really long time to get us back to a stable place.
And that's, you're speaking to the human toll, and, I don't know, it's just Americans have been so removed from so much of the human toll of things like war for so long on the home front, that we only focus on the economic toll. And Reece, your generation has never had to deal with things like shortages. My generation hasn't ever even had to deal with things like shortages or rationing, or like that may be coming. I understand if the Strait of Hormuz isn't opened by like the beginning of June, that the economic ripple effects will cascade throughout the summer and the fall to the point where we may legitimately be seeing shortages of goods, gas getting on toward $10 a gallon. I don't know, man. My grandma who hoarded stuff in her basement seems a lot less crazy now.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's just to, echo what Karla said. Nobody asked for this. I mean, they keep... One, they can't give a straight answer to why we're actually doing this. 1 minute it's a war, 1 minute it's an incursion, 1 minute it's a military conflict. Who knows what it is tomorrow? But like the one thing that they can seem to keep straight is that we're doing this because we can't let Iran have a nuclear weapon. Well, when Iran didn't have a nuclear weapon? Before you pull this out of the Iranian deal.
Yeah. Well, but Reece, that was Barack Hussein Obama's deal. Bad deal. And now we're just trying to get back to that. For the man who claims to be like the world's best negotiator, I think he has proven to be the world's worst negotiator. I've got to move things on, speed things up, and move on to the next story here. Yeah, well, the art of corruption. Speaking of corruption, so this from the New Republic this week. Donald Trump has sued the IRS for $10 billion over the leak of his tax returns during his first terms. Now, his own Department of Justice is now negotiating a settlement with him using taxpayer money. Now, this proposed settlement creates a $1.7 billion slush fund drawn from the Treasury's Judgment Fund and overseen by a commission Trump can fire at will, with no required transparency on who gets paid out from this thing. Potential recipients will include January 6 insurrectionists and entities associated with the president himself. Representative Jamie Raskin of Maryland says, obviously the 14th Amendment prohibits using federal money to compensate people who participated in insurrection. This may do exactly that. But really, with this Supreme Court, what is the Constitution anymore?
It was just a tour around the Capitol.
Yes. Raskin says that Congress never would have approved this thing, obviously, and it is completely outside of our constitutional framework. Again, isn't everything anymore. Staying on the corruption front, I did want to point this one out. So Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy apparently filmed a 5-part family road trip TV series. At the same time, he's overseeing a department that is dealing with an air traffic controller shortage and multiple deadly airline crashes. Sean, I get you. I wouldn't want to fly right now either. So this trip, called the Great American Road Trip, was funded by a 501c4 by the same name. Now, no donors, of course, are disclosure is required as a 501c4, but we do know that Boeing, Toyota, Shell, United Airlines, Google, which owns Waymo, and Royal Caribbean, among others, each paid between $100,000 and $1 million to this nonprofit. Larger donors got VIP access to Duffy and his team. Since taking over the department, Duffy has stalled airline consumer protections, issued 0 fines against airlines for the first time in 30 years, forgiven all of their outstanding penalties to the airlines. Of course, these are all things that the donors to this project wanted. Boeing, the top sponsor to the project, has seen its the FAA lift its 737 MAX production cap and had its ability to self-certify aircraft restored, despite a safety record that includes crashes killing over 300 people. Crew, Citizens for Responsibility and Ethics in Washington, has filed an ethics complaint. We'll see if anything comes of that. Karla, I mean, listen, we knew this guy was corrupt, but they keep finding fun new ways to be corrupt.
And again, when you're trying to maximize profit at the expense of everything else, that's what we're going to keep seeing. We are seeing an unprecedented number of, like the deregulation of all of these entities, all of these agencies, and the weaponization of these administrative agencies too. So again, at the end of the day, this is only going to benefit those who are in power. And I think, again, when we look back and we see what this is all going to mean for the American people, we're going to see that we were just duped. We were just duped and defrauded, but it's happening in front of our eyes. And yeah, I'm so scared. I say that all the time. I'm so scared about the way that the direction that we're headed in. And I don't know what it's going to take for us to like be in to bring those ethics back and to be in a place where there's restored confidence in our government, because I don't see that happening anytime soon.
I mean, and Reece, where's the line? I mean, we keep blowing past any guardrails that we had. They're removing the guardrails for corruption and openly rewarding their political allies with taxpayer dollars. Like, when is it enough for the people to go enough and revolt, peacefully?
Before I answer that question, you remember when everybody over at Fox News and Newsmax were going like batshit insane when Pete Buttigieg took his let me check my notes, paternity leave?
Yes.
And they have, I mean, I know we're all sick and tired of, but what if Biden did this? But like, I don't recall Buttigieg selling sponsorships for his paternity leave.
But yeah, it's so open, it's so brazen. Maybe that's why it works. It's like, well, surely if this was wrong, somebody would have stepped in to stop it, right?
Yeah. But to answer your question about where's the line, I think it really depends on who the person is. If we're talking Congress, the line is as soon as being allies with Trump is no longer politically profitable. And for the MAGA movement as a whole, the line is when following Trump no longer, I guess, I don't know, reaffirms their preconceived notions and makes them feel better.
Or until he throws them away. I mean, that's what we've been seeing with a lot of his cabinet members. Just
yeah, but like,
them. Yeah.
But like, not to like argue against that point, because I think it's valid, but like I'm more talking about like the people, the voters, and like, you know, you see interview after interview and poll after poll of like, is your life better now that Trump's president? And like, it's not overwhelmingly positive. And so it's like,
his approval's like in the low 30s right now. Obviously, we're looking at a wave election in the fall if we have free and fair elections. It's already with the gerrymandering, we're going to see
get their act together.
Yeah, stick a pin in that. We'll talk about that here in a second. But first, I wanted to, I guess, let's stay on the corruption front. In our country, the FBI should theoretically be investigating things like that, but the head of our FBI is a corrupt drunkard. Kash Patel, aka J. Edgar Boozer, over here, testified before Congress this week. What was supposed to be a budget hearing in the Senate Appropriations Committee, where Patel was to defend the FBI's $12.5 billion budget request. It quickly became something else entirely. Now, recall, under Patel, the FBI has been using, he's been using the government's aircraft for personal travel to go, watch his country singer girlfriend perform. He's been using FBI agents to be her designated driver. The FBI's corruption squad has been disbanded. But Patel has apparently been, stalling the release of the Epstein files to limit political damage to Trump. He went over to the Olympics in Milan to party with the hockey team there on the public dime. All of this came up during what was supposed to be this budget hearing, with Senator Chris Van Hollen of Maryland citing reporting by The Atlantic that Patel's excessive drinking has impaired the FBI director's ability to lead the bureau. Now, Patel called this a total farce and accused Van Hollen himself of, quote, slinging margaritas with Kilmar Abrego Garcia in El Salvador and running up a $7,000 bar tab, which it turns out was just Van Hollen paying for a holiday party for his staff. Now,
out of campaign funds.
Yeah, while that exchange was happening, Patel's official FBI account was on Twitter, or X, or whatever the hell they call it now, live posting Van Hollen's campaign finance records as opposition research. Patel got into it with Senator Patty Murray as well. Van Hollen requested that Patel take the Alcohol Use Disorders Identification Test, or Audit. Patel said, "Sweet, I'm getting an Audi." No. Van Hollen did call Patel's bluff the next day after Patel said, "I'd gladly take a test with you side by side." Van Hollen posted his results, and Patel, to our knowledge, still hasn't taken said test and posted his results. I don't know. Like, man, the FBI, Reece, used to be this like stodgy, straight-laced, buttoned up organization, and for all their problems, and there were many, the FBI did things in America to American citizens that should be called out over the last 80 years.
War on drugs.
Yeah, war on drugs. But this guy is this guy can't even take care of the war on drugs inside his own office, man.
They're shameless. Sorry, I don't know if that was like for Reece or that was for me, but they're shameless. And I think that's what's so frustrating to people who are like looking from the outside. Like, how can they get away with so much of this? And they're crooks. It's to me, this idea of like the weaponization of these administrative agencies that have a very specific, or law enforcement agencies that have very specific roles within the government. And when you have someone like Trump who's a crook and who is just outright doing away with precedent, with the way that historically things have been done, and there's like no checks and balances. I mean, this is what you have. This is the result of that. And I think that's what's so frustrating to so many people, that people like Kash Patel are able to go and go snorkel, you know, and like on Pearl Harbor. And he's like, yeah, I was, you know,
Was that
it's
Cash or was
completely
that
justifiable
Oh yeah,
to
that was
him.
this week too.
that was Cash? Okay, I couldn't remember if that was Cash or Hegseth.
Yeah, it was Kash Patel. And again, like the lack of accountability, the lack of
Decorum.
taking responsibility, they just stick to the pre-scripted answers that they've been fed, and it's like you're talking to a wall. It doesn't matter if it, you know, you're under oath or you're there to answer those questions. Like the pre-scripted answers, again, is what's so frustrating to me, and like to I think so many other people too.
Would it
Well,
be
yeah,
more
Reese, we saw
accurate
this
to
thing with
say
like.
that?
You
Would
go
it be
ahead.
more accurate to say that it's like talking to an AI store clerk through a microphone ordering a sausage in China?
Yeah, yeah. I mean that too.
If you got that, I applaud you.
I do not get your reference.
There
These
was
kids,
a
yeah.
no, it was part of Trump's China trip. Brett Baer went over and
Oh
they
God.
had this like, I don't know, AI powered robot store clerk food thing, and but you had to talk into a microphone, and of all the foods he could have ordered, he ordered a sausage.
Oh wow.
But it made the
Oh
rounds
man,
on late night because it was just ridiculous looking.
I'm sorry I missed that one.
But to pivot back to Patel and the FBI, you know, as bad as J. Edgar Hoover was, and he was not a good person, nobody had to worry if he was going to come into work hungover or come into work at all. Like, I don't know my FBI director history. I'm sure we've had great FBI directors and terrible FBI directors, but we've never had, to my knowledge, an FBI director who has even had to approach the line of taking the audit test. Like, that's not what I want the nation's chief law enforcement officer to be spending his time on. I would like him to, I don't know, fight crime and direct the FBI.
Yeah. Well, you know, funny story about the FBI directors. Every single one, the entire history of the FBI, they've all been Republicans. Yeah, interesting. Let's move on.
I'm
There
sure
were
the percentages amongst agents, because that's where most of them come from, except Patel, is probably outstandingly high Republican, but that's a throwaway point.
But I will say that agents, largely the rank and file, have been serious people who take things seriously and play things straight by the book. Now, there are, again, a lot of things in this country's history that the FBI has done that are unsavory, to say the least. But you know, that's coming from the top down. That is coming from Hoover, who was there himself for like 50 years. There were elections this week I want to talk about. You know, after last week's Indiana elections, it sort of let our guard down here, but we're really now just getting into the meat of primary season. Ours are relatively early in the grand scheme of things. And a couple stories I want to talk about. First of all, let's relitigate the 2020 election a little bit over in Colorado. Governor Jared Polis not pardoned. He commuted the sentence of Tina Peters, a election denier who orchestrated a 2021 breach of her county's election system, arranging for a conspiracy theorist to use the staffer's credentials to access sensitive software updates. The county had to scrap all of its voting equipment. She was convicted on multiple felony accounts and sentenced to 9 years. Polis, like I said, cut her sentence in half on Friday, ordering her release on parole on June 1st. This drew condemnation from both Democrats, obviously, and the Republican prosecutor who tried her, and county clerks statewide. Now, Polis's rationale is that the appeals court already found her sentence was partly based on her speech, not just her conduct. He called it unduly harsh for a first-time nonviolent offender. This decision all but ends Polis's future in Democratic politics. I don't think the party will forgive him. Now, moving on.
When you have your state chair come out and say, yeah, what you did is wrong, that's not a good sign.
Not a good sign for Jared Polis, who I think who a lot of people thought he had, a bright future in Democratic politics. I don't see how he recovers from this. I also am not sure how the country will recover from the Supreme Court gutting the Voting Rights Act a couple weeks ago. Now, recall the Supreme Court less than 2 weeks ago, I believe at this point, basically gutted the important provisions of Section 5, or was it Section 2? They've gutted basically a whole thing at this point of the Voting Rights Act, which allowed states to redraw their maps and eliminate majority-minority districts, and states got right to it. The Supreme Court cleared Alabama this week to use a map that a lower court twice blocked as intentional racial discrimination, less than a week before the primary was due to begin there. This move, invokes the Purcell principle, which says that courts shouldn't create election chaos close to voting day. This very court used that principle to allow Texas to use rigged maps just a couple years ago. And the irony is that this same week, they've also rejected Virginia Democrats' bid to their emergency appeal and let stand that state Supreme Court's ruling that nullified a voter-approved redistricting referendum there. So, Virginia was doing their best, giving the last word to voters to redistrict, to sort of balance what Republicans have done in other states. Governor Abby Spanberger there, not really able to do a whole heck of a lot to stand up to this decision. There are some Democrats who are calling for more hardball tactics there in Virginia. There's not really a whole heck of a lot they can do. Now, staying in the South, in Louisiana, they had elections yesterday. They do them on Saturdays there. And Senator Bill Cassidy lost his re-election bid, finishing third in the Republican primary to the Trump-endorsed U.S. Representative Julia Letlow and State Treasurer John Fleming. The two of them will have a runoff on June 27th. There were no congressional primaries in this Louisiana election because they are in the middle of redrawing their maps. They had canceled elections where early votes had already been processed and are moving those now to November, where they will hold a one-time jungle primary. It is a mess down there in Louisiana. There were also elections this week in West Virginia. Not a lot of surprises there. And in Nebraska, which had a couple interesting developments there. Scott Peterson won the GOP primary for Secretary of State. This guy is an election conspiracy theorist. Retiring Representative Don Bacon of Omaha called him the, quote, president of the Tinfoil Hat Club. Now, Bacon is retiring from Congress this year, and in the race to replace him on the Democratic side in Nebraska's 2nd District, Denise Powell won the primary there. She's a political organizer, defeating State Senator John Kavanaugh by about 2 points. Powell will face Trump-endorsed Republican Brinker Harding in November. This is like the one blue dot in very red Nebraska. Kavanaugh's loss avoided a potential nightmare on the Democratic side. Had he won and vacated his state Senate seat, the Republican governor would have been able to appoint his replacement, potentially giving the GOP enough leverage to change how Nebraska awards its electoral college votes. And then in the Senate primary in Nebraska, weird stuff there on the Democratic side, where that primary was won by Cindy Burbank, a pharmacy technician who won over or nearly 90% of the votes over a basically Republican and Democrats clothing, Pastor William Forbes. Burbank plans to immediately drop out of this race, allowing the independent Dan Osborne to run against the Republican in the fall without Democratic opposition. this is a strategy that Nebraska Democrats have been using. They're not running their own candidate. They're going to line up behind the independent because the Democratic brand is so damaged there. Osborne ran relatively well in his Senate race 2 years ago for the other seat there. So a lot of election news that we got to stuff in here really quick. I don't know. What stands out to you this week, Karla? The Nebraska race, interesting stuff there. Louisiana, Cassidy losing his primary. A whole big grab bag to choose from. Reach your hand in.
Oh my gosh, that was so much. That was so much. And I'm like, you're right. And oh my gosh, and that happened. And that happened. You're right. And I'm just, my brain is like running in all different directions because of how much happened this week. And I think this conversation can take a lot of different directions, but ultimately what I always want to focus and like hyper focus on is the power that people have in the local elections and at the local level, but also understanding the mechanisms by which these elections happen. So not just with like if you're running for city council or if you're running for state representative or congressman, but also if you're running for a party or for a position within the party, within your specific party. So I identified Democrat on the ballot. And there's rules.
Don't be so enthusiastic.
The Indiana Democratic Party has a list of rules that dictate the requirements for someone to, if they want to run for a party position, that they have to abide by. Right now, there's a lot of discretion within following those rules. And what's frustrating to me, and I think to also a lot of people, is just how these rules are enforced when it benefits those in power and in control. They're not equally applied, right?
They're weaponizing it.
Exactly. Yeah, they're weaponizing it and they're using it for their own benefit and their own purposes. And so all that to say is, if for those who are watching, who are listening, I know it's not the most like exciting thing to talk about, or it's not the most
yay municipal elections,
right? Or like combing through these rules, but man, that challenging those and getting involved with those processes is going to teach you so much more about these issues than reading about it. And that's what I would encourage people to do. We have a special election coming up in Indiana. The Indiana Democratic Party is hosting our state convention in June, on June 6th, right? And what a lot of people don't know, and I'm not surprised by this, because again, if I wasn't involved in this in the day-to-day basis, I would be like, wait, what? I don't understand. But basically, there are certain positions, there are certain offices, statewide offices, that someone who is seeking to get the Democratic nomination, they don't go through the regular primary process. So a person isn't going to file and then go out and campaign from the beginning of the year until May. So for Secretary of State, Attorney General, and a few
auditor, comptroller, yeah,
auditor,
basically the entire cabinet, I think.
Right, like the higher ones, the high offices, statewide offices, you have to go through the convention, either the Democratic or the Republican convention, depending on what nomination you're seeking. And it's going to be the state delegates who are going to choose. So it's like, yeah, the delegates, a delegation of folks who have been chosen to cast a vote for this person or this other person. We have a very, interesting. We have two people right now who are running for Secretary of State within the Democratic Party, and then Greg Ballard with the, trying to seek or run as an independent. But there's a lot to unpack there, Bo Bai and Blythe Potter. And maybe that's a conversation for another day. We can put a little pin on that, because I'm also thinking about doing a debrief of, okay, if you haven't been to the Indiana Democratic Party State Convention, this is what it's like. This is a quick orientation. Because there's a lot of new people who are part of this, and I think it's important to know what to expect and just like what happens once you're in these spaces. So sorry, I didn't mean to like take the conversation that way.
No,
But
you're good. You're good. Actually, Derek Holder
special
here
election is
on
what I was gonna say.
Derek
Sorry.
Holder here on Progressive Indiana Network. This coming Friday is going to do a whole a deep dive on how the convention process works in the Democratic side, and it's pretty similar on the Republican side too. Reece, really quick before we have to turn the page on this, the dynamic in Nebraska and Indiana is kind of the same in that Democrats have not performed well at the state level. Is something like what they're doing in Nebraska with Osborne and having the Democrats kind of coalesce behind an independent something maybe Indiana should be considering, say, in the 2028 Senate race against Todd Young?
I don't know. I'll be honest. I don't know. I think one reason Dan Osborne was so successful is he came about naturally. It wasn't, if we did what you were sort of setting up in your scenario, I think a lot of Republicans would just point and say, look, that's a Democrat just in independent's clothing. Don't fall for him.
That's what they're doing with Osborne. Yeah.
But like, I don't know. Osborne has the bona fide. Like, he's progressive, but like Nebraska progressive, right? Like, he's not like a New York progressive or a California progressive. He's a lot like Rob Sand.
Yeah, it's certainly a different it's a different kind of electorate there. Osborne's a union guy and as such has a certain working class credentials that a lot of folks maybe don't have. I think
what the Indiana Democratic Party needs to do is stop picking from out of touch people. Like I really like Jennifer McCormick. Her being a teacher really helps. Karla, as Scott, Karla and audience, I'm the product of teachers, father teacher, 3 of my 4 grandparents teachers. So education, important to me. I thought she would have made a great governor, but people are going to see the doctor. Same with Woody Myers. They're going to see the doctor and immediately be turned off because, they're a doctor. They think they're so much better than me. I think we need to start recruiting from people like Blythe, who don't come from legacy politics, who don't come from money, who, have that. She's a salon owner, and I'm sure she's had, working experience before owning the salon or wellness or whatever it is.
Yeah. And she also has her MBA. So she knows business, and, business is the business of the Secretary of State's office, among other things.
And I can't stand Gary Snyder, but the one thing he constantly is talking about, and all the other more liberal columnists are talking about, is how Bo Bai can bring in the money, and it's like, great, cool.
And then who do you work for? I guess.
Sorry to interrupt. I think that we also have to mention, if we're gonna start building a third party or like some sort of third party coalition, it has to start at the ground level, at the very, very ground level, and all these folks who are very active, on social media, out in the protests. Coming together right around these issues and getting involved in the electorate process, and I think building from that up. Because I would love to see a third party on the ballot. That'd be fantastic, giving people options. And I'm excited to work towards something like that. Yeah.
So we're way behind. We're running about 15 minutes behind schedule. I do, and I want to make sure that we get to talk about the couple of the stories that you had flagged for us, Karla. So I'm gonna tackle this one here really quick. We got a couple public health stories on the U.S. level that I wanted to mention before we turn to our Indiana stories. Now, the FDA chief is out of a job in the latest sign of public health chaos under RFK Jr. Democracy Now! Had this story. FDA Commissioner Dr. Martin Makary resigned after only 13 months, pushed out for apparently trying to block the approval of fruit-flavored vapes, which somehow RFK Jr. is in favor of, despite the fact that he's like all about, natural and getting like artificial flavors and colors out of your food. Okay,
Yeah,
you
but
can't
this
eat
is
them,
the same
but you
man
can
who
inhale
eats
them.
Full testicles. So I mean, who the hell knows what's going on in his little brain?
Yeah, so replacing Makary, at least on an interim basis, is Kyle Diamantis, a Florida attorney, former rep for Abbott Laboratories, and a personal friend of Donald Trump Jr., somebody with no medical background whatsoever. The U.S. now has no confirmed FDA commissioner, no confirmed CDC director, and no Senate-approved Surgeon General. This is while Madman RFK Jr. is running Health and Human Services. The FDA shakeup continued with the departure of the top drug regulator this week, again, just days after the agency's chief resigned. The head of the FDA's Center for Drug Evaluation and Research, the division that regulates all prescriptions and over-the-counter drugs, is also out. Dr. Tracy Beth Hoog was the fifth person to hold that post in Trump's second administration already, only 16 months in. So now the FDA has an acting commissioner with no medical background and an acting drug division head replacing somebody who was herself already an acting appointment. HHS says they're actively searching for a permanent replacement. And I guess in another healthcare story, the Supreme Court ruled on Thursday that telehealth access to mifepristone can continue while the underlying case plays out in lower courts, blocking a Fifth Circuit ruling that would have required in-person dispensing, a critical blow to abortion access, especially in banned states. Now, even with these, very conservative Supreme Court allowing telehealth abortion to continue, at least for now, Clarence Thomas and Sam Alito dissented, as of course they did. Thomas arguing that the 1873 Comstock Act prohibits mailing abortion medication because that act is somehow relevant in 2026. Alito calling telehealth abortion a scheme to get around their Dobbs ruling, and lamenting that abortions have actually increased since the Dobbs ruling took place. Advocates warn, however, that the administration may be slow-walking action on mifepristone until after the midterms to avoid the electoral backlash, then move. Roughly 2/3 of all U.S. abortions are currently medication abortions. Karla, as a woman, I guess I want to hear your perspective on this.
I mean, it's horrible. I mean, the rate by which we're regressing, going back, and making it so nearly impossible to, plan for a family here in the current state that we live in. I think about children. Okay, am I going to have children? And then I look at my bank account and I'm like, wow, okay, I don't have that much money in my bank account. So the fact that, there's all these restrictions with access to healthcare as it relates to family planning, and also dealing with the current realities that working class regular people here are living with. I mean, it's horrible. It's a really horrible combination. And again, the criminalization of these like healthcare. It's horrifying. And I mean, I could say a lot more about that, but I'm not grateful to live in Indiana, but I'm grateful to live in a place where, let me backtrack. Let me backtrack a little bit. I'm grateful that I have access to healthcare. I'm grateful that I have options. I'm grateful that that I have access to transportation, and not a lot of people do. So it's the inequality, like the rate by which this is affecting people from lower tax brackets. It's horrifying, and I think we're gonna be seeing the effects of that in the years to come. Yeah.
Yeah. Reece, you know, with RFK and his cronies dismantling the public health agencies in this country, and you know, if folks link through to progressiveindiana.net, where I have that Democracy Now piece linked in the show notes, the you know, they're talking about how this may take decades to repair the damage done. So I guess how does it feel to be of the last generation where Americans had a public health system they could count on? My God, the kids coming up after you, it's a crapshoot, man.
You know, I'm reminded of video I was watching on sometimes I hate my memory. I cannot remember which country, but it was a South Asian or East Asian country. Philippines? Yes, Philippines. And you know, because they were one of the nations that started as a democracy and then slid back into a dictatorship under Duterte, if I'm correct. Feel free to correct me. And you know, this video was, you know, sort of talking about, you know, even after Duterte was overthrown, some of those rights that were given up never came back. Even after democracy came back, or more freedoms came back, some rights just never did. And you know, that sort of gets you thinking, well, can we apply that to healthcare? Like, you know, say for abortion, if we take that right away, which we have, not everywhere, but we have, you know, once we get, say, a friendly Supreme Court or a friendly president or a friendly Congress, you know, will that right be able to be revived? I think that's the question we have to be asking ourselves, and preparing for the chance that that answer could be no. And what do we do from there?
The right wing worked for 50 years to undo those protections, and it might take 50 years for us to get them back. Now, we've only got Karla till noon, so I wanted to jump ahead because she pulled a couple stories that I wanted to make sure we covered here. So I'm gonna jump, and then maybe Reece and I will come back and talk about some Indiana public health stories before we move on to some other things that I'd got pulled for him. So. Let's talk about immigration a little bit. I know this is very much something you're passionate about, Karla, as somebody who immigrated to the country yourself, and also who fights for the immigrant community in your daily work. And yesterday, there was a statewide day of action protesting the ICE detention at Miami Correctional Facility, as well as the broader immigration enforcement taking place in our state under President Trump and Governor Mike Braun. I will have stories linked from Fort Wayne, Indianapolis, Mishawaka. Again, there were 28 protests, so all across the state. Organizers cite that 70% of the people arrested by ICE have no criminal history. A current officer at the Miami Correctional Facility reportedly told organizers that the facility lacks adequate staffing to manage both state inmates and ICE detainees. Key demands beyond ending detention at Miami Correctional Facility include funding immigration courts, with organizer Elizabeth Marvin in Indianapolis saying, quote, a large chunk of them are going through it the right way and are being detained as they leave their court hearings. And up in Fort Wayne, Sandra Garza of Fuerza Unida says, quote, the original concept, she's referring to ICE, was to get people back to their home countries in a humane way. We have now lost that humanity. And, you know, a big reason that that this Miami facility was proposed in the first place is because the state said, well, the feds are going to pay for it. We're actually going to bring in money because of this thing. Well, it turns out the state has spent $12.5 million housing ICE detainees there since the contract began in October, but has only received less than $5.1 million back from the federal government. I'm no mathematician, but that sounds like a $7 million gap to me. The contract is supposed to pay Indiana $291 per bed per day, about 4 times the normal daily inmate cost for up to 1,000 detainees at a time, but the feds are 4 months behind on their payments. The state prepaid nearly $16 million in upfront infrastructure costs and are now waiting on reimbursement for that too. Monthly reporting on this only exists because Democrats successfully amended Senate Bill 76 to require that, and even then, the March and April reports were mistakenly left off the Budget Committee hearing. Karla wrote all about Senate Bill 76 in March over on Substack. I will link to that in the show notes. Karla, important days of action yesterday. But will that begin to address the situation here in the state? Are Hoosiers tired of the way our immigrant neighbors are being treated sufficiently yet?
With 2.5 years left until this administration hopefully concludes, we have a really long way to go. I'm encouraged to see how many people are outspoken about the treatment and the way that immigration has been dealt with in the country, not just from our neighbors here in Indianapolis, Indiana, but also throughout the nation. And it's encouraging to see how, coalitions of people are coming together to demand more humane treatment, equal access, and rights for our communities. But I'm still thinking ahead of how much work we have to do and how burnt out the people in social service agencies are, the people who are legal service providers, because these systems were never meant to accommodate the amount of chaos that is being imposed upon these communities. They were never designed with that in mind. And I know I've been saying this, but it is going to get so much worse before it gets better. And I think all of our constitutional rights are going to be done away with. We have a lot of, when you look at the plans that the administration has as it relates to mass incarceration and getting people into these detention centers, the speed by which they're trying the warehouses, right? And the contracts that they have. I mean, the numbers that I'm reading are not computing, they're not computing in my head, because the timeline doesn't make sense. They want to have these warehouses up and running by the end of the year, September 2026. And they're supposed to increase capacity by nearly double what we have right now. So there's 67,000 current ICE detainees around the country. And this is let's be mindful, this is people who have been picked up as part of the increased enforcement aspect of the administration. So now we're talking about doubling capacity. No, not doubling, more than doubling it, by 100,000 beds. So that's what's really worrisome to me. And they're very ill-conceived concepts. And it just makes me, I understand that they don't care about the logistics and the practical aspect of this, because at the end of the day, they're hypothetically going to be getting all this money from the Department of Homeland Security, which, by the way, is the largest funded law enforcement agency in the country. And when you have money being injected into these projects, who cares? Who cares what the human and the human toll that it takes on people is? So I could go
And they're
on.
they're already rounding up people. Like it said, 70% of the people have no criminal history whatsoever. And like the number of people who they're rounding up who have a violent criminal history, the ones that they say that they want to target, that's like such a small portion. It's like 14% or something. I don't have the math on that
And we
one in
already
front of me
have
right now.
procedures to deal, with those folks. But again, when you have an administration that does things on a whim, that dictates policy via tweets or X or whatever, this is the result of that. And I'm not kidding when I say that it's gonna be like your constitutional rights too, Scott, that are gonna be that you're gonna be subjected. All of us are gonna be subjected to this because, like I said, unless you're rounding up cattle or just all of us en masse, where are you gonna get all these people to fill these 100,000 beds from?
You always pick a group, right? First they came for. We all know the poem. It doesn't stop with the people they say are their initial target. It's always and then who, and then who, and then two. Karla, we could dig into this for hours, I'm sure. I know you have to run. Thank you for being here with us today. Where can the people find you?
They can find me on social media. I've been doing a lot more on Substack, so I would love it if people follow me on Substack. I think that's going to be my main medium that I'll be using to push information out, because there's a lot of folks that don't have social media. So my Substack is just my name, Karla Lopez Owens, Karla Lopez, Lopez, Owens, Owens. Social media, I'm also really active on social media. And we have a lot of things coming up in the summer. I would love to, keep the conversation going. I'm sure that this is one of other conversations that we will be having, but the on-the-ground work is always what I am overemphasize to people. We're going to need a lot of help. And yeah, we just need people on standby between now and when it's time. When it's go time.
All right, you keep us posted. We let us know how we can help, and we are on Substack as well. We will always be happy to cross-post whatever you put out, so you let us know
awesome.
when you have something out. All right, I know you've got to run. Thank you so much for joining us here today. We really appreciate it, and hey, let's do it again sometime.
Okay, thank you for having me. It's you're so smart, and I'll see you soon.
All right. Thank you. All right. That was Karla Lopez Owens, an attorney and community advocate there in Indianapolis. I'm going to invite Reece back in here in just a second. But before we get to the last quarter of our show, I want to share a word from our friends down in Salem County there, or in Salem, with the Washington Community Action Project. They are trying to acquire a plot of land that is in their community and could use our help. So let us take 45 seconds to hear from them.
The Crossroads Commons in Salem, Indiana, headquartered in a historic Salem home, is holding a fundraiser to expand via the purchase of the 3/4-acre lot of land adjacent to their facility. Please consider donating or spread the word so that they can further expand their services to the community. Scan the QR code on your screen for a direct link to the donation page and help us buy the grass.
All right. So, great organization down there in Salem. Our friends could really use our help. So, let us talk about Reece. We're talking about immigration with Karla, and I sort of jumped over some public health stories here in Indiana. We were talking about public health at the end of the U.S. and international section of the news. And, we talked about that abortion story. I did want to mention Indiana had an abortion case come before our state Supreme Court this week ourselves, where the Supreme Court rejected a challenge to the state's near total abortion ban, a 4-1 ruling. No oral arguments were held, no explanation given. The court just issuing a 1-page ruling. This challenge argued that the ban's health exceptions were too narrow to comply with the state's the state constitution's life and liberty protections, the court let stand a lower court ruling that the, quote, reasonable medical judgment standard is constitutional. A separate challenge arguing the ban violates Indiana's religious freedom law is still alive. Oral arguments will be held in that on September 20th. The state this week also unveiled a Medicaid overhaul aimed at pressuring hospitals to lower their prices. A lot of explanation involved in how this would work. I don't have nearly enough time to dig into it all, especially with our time constraints today. Just know that the show notes will be up on progressiveindiana.net later this afternoon, where we try to make sense of all of that. In Indianapolis this week, the Office of Public Health and Safety came under the microscope following an internal audit. Mirror Indy had this one, great organization there. Support Mirror Indy, independent journalism. Anyway, the OPHS there is under state audit after internal review found contracts went to individuals and organizations with ties to OPHS employees. This organization was founded by Mayor Joe Hogsett in 2016 as part of his pledge to increase public health and safety in the Circle City. Seems like the Hogsett administration keeps running into these problems, Reece, where there is self-dealing and political allies and acquaintances of the mayor and his staff wind up with these government contracts. What's going on with that? And one more public health story I wanted to read into the record here in Indiana. State Senator Mike Bohacek from Michigan City is drafting a medical marijuana bill ahead of the 2027 session, citing the federal reclassification of cannabis from Schedule 1 to Schedule 3. Mike Braun, the governor, finally signaled some willingness to consider this legislation just a few weeks ago, a notable shift for our state with some of the most stringent marijuana laws in the country. We are the last holdout in our region. Every surrounding state has legalized cannabis in some form, and Hoosiers are already spending billions with a B of dollars annually on cannabis products, with that revenue and those tax dollars going out of state. Reece, I know, listen, I don't want to, perpetuate stereotypes, but I know that is an issue you care about. And you're on mute, sir.
I'm
Welcome back.
rusty, okay? That's my excuse. I haven't done one of these things in months. No perpetuating of stereotypes needed, nor offense taken. First thing I would say, people, don't hold your breath. We've seen bills introduced by both Democrats and Republicans to legalize both medical and recreational, and they have never passed. Maybe now that Braun's kind of signaled he's on board, and maybe now that, the rescheduling, which was so long overdue, happened, maybe that could siphon off some votes and get enough to pass. But I don't remember who said it or what commenter said it, but I find myself agreeing with this point under, I think, a post about this is like, medical, big whoop. Like, that's not where the money is. The money is in recreational, and people are still going to be going out of state to get it. We are, until Indiana has the balls to pass recreational use, we are not going to get the tax dollars that, or we will not reap all of the tax dollars that we can have. And I say this every time talk about marijuana and legislation pops up. It's kind of my stump on this thing. If Indiana waits too long and waits to legalize it once it's already federally legal, which has been, some of the floatings, we are going to miss out on creating a massive in-state industry that is going to employ thousands of Hoosiers and generate millions of dollars in tax revenue. Because as the law stands right now, even though it's been moved down, you still cannot transport classified drug or scheduled drugs over state lines. It's technically a felony. And so that means in every single state where there is an industry, Colorado, Michigan, Illinois, Ohio, et cetera, everything from growing, from harvesting, from processing, everything is in state. What's going to happen if we wait until it's federally legal and so transporting it across state lines, no issue? The established dispensaries and companies in Michigan, in Illinois, maybe in Ohio, although I know Ohio just did it, are going to come in. They're going to be the ones to supply, the dispensaries that pop up. We're not going to be forced to grow, to produce, to package, to everything here in Indiana.
Yeah, the big boys come in. You want to make sure that we spawn our own homegrown industry. I like Senator Bohacek, am from Michigan City, and whenever I'm up in the area to visit family, New Buffalo is right there, the state line, not far, and you can't go more than a few yards into Michigan without dispensary, and that money is leaving the state very swiftly.
Yep.
And could be paying for important improvements that we need here. God knows we need a lot of them.
Could avoid having, I-70 become a toll road? Which one is it? The
various things. And God knows, with
I know he's talking about
gas
turning
tax.
one of them into toll roads.
It is 70, and with we've had the state gas tax rescinded here for the last month and a half now. Might be renewed again because gas prices certainly aren't coming down this summer. That's money that needs to go to our road and bridges fund. It'd be nice to have some cushion from cannabis sales to soften that blow. Let's move on, Reece. I want to I got to jump over the immigration one. We talked about those. So there's still unsettled elections here in this state. We had our primaries, a little over a week ago,
2 weeks,
almost 2 weeks now, and things still aren't completely settled. Now, the Senate District 23 race was just certified on Friday, and incumbent Spencer Deery beat back the Trump-backed challenger, Paula Copenhaver, by all of 3 votes. Don't ever let them tell you that your vote doesn't matter. Now, Deery was one of several senators who drew a primary challenge after refusing to support Trump's mid-decade redistricting push in December. Of the 8 Senate Republicans primaried this cycle, only Deery and Greg Good down in Terre Haute survived. That is, of course, if Deery does survive, there is no automatic recount, but surely Copenhaver will request one. Again, only 3 votes separating the two. She has until Tuesday at noon to file for a recount. Additionally, over in Fort Wayne, Senator Liz Brown leads her challenger, Trump-backed. Well, she is the Trump-backed one there, but Rokita and Senator Jim Banks sponsored an even further right challenger in the form of Darren Vogt. Brown leads Vogt by only 14 votes. Again, don't let them tell you your vote doesn't matter. So I suspect we'll find a recount there as well. Now, Secretary of State Diego Morales has been asked to step aside if a recount occurs by State Rep Ed Delaney, because Morales, as Secretary of State, would chair the recount commission, but he's publicly affiliated with Turning Point USA, which endorsed Copenhaver. He publicly backed the redistricting plan that Deery voted against. Now, Morales says he has no intention of stepping away from his duties of the office. Delaney's call came just a day after Morales drew criticism from voting rights advocates over a trip to Washington, D.C., where he met with federal officials and national leaders to discuss, quote, continued efforts to strengthen Indiana elections. Morales' office also highlighting the continued collaboration with state and federal partners to ensure Hoosiers can have confidence in the electoral process. That's a quote. Again, the only reason Hoosiers don't have confidence in our electoral systems is because far-right Republicans like Morales and President Trump have attacked our voting systems. Common Cause Julia Vaughn noted Morales handed Indiana voter rolls over to Customs and Immigration Services and the Department of Justice, saying, quote, I'd suggest that instead of chasing photo ops, Secretary Morales commit himself to not sharing sensitive Hoosier data with the federal government. End quote. Of course, Morales didn't just reject this call to recuse. He's also in political trouble of his own making. Abdul-Hakim Shahbaz at Indiana Politics had this one. Morales failed to qualify as a delegate to the Republican State Party Convention in his own home district in Marion County, finishing 12th out of 18 candidates with less than 4% of the vote. Morales won't even get to vote for himself at his own party's convention. Reece, Morales is a clown, but I guess the real thing I want to talk about is the closeness of these races. It just goes to show how important your vote is.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I mean, there's... I'm sure you felt this way, you know, as a progressive, as a Democrat here in Indiana. You go into the ballot box, and as you're voting, you're saying, this really doesn't matter, but I'm still doing it. Like,
especially in Democratic primaries in a lot of the state, you just don't have a lot of candidates. I'm one of the lucky ones. Here in Monroe County, we actually have Democrats up and down the board running for every office. You know, we're one of the blue islands in the state, and in so many other counties in the state, even Democrats pull Republican ballots because that's the only time you have a chance to like vote in contested races instead of just putting a rubber stamp on like the two people running for office on the Democratic side.
I mean, Madison County, where I'm based, we, I believe I'm correct in saying it, we have no Democrats at the county level. We might have one, but like, there have been so many times where we've failed to fill the ballot. And, you know, but back to getting out to vote, like, yeah, it's your right, right? Like, you gotta protect your rights from them taking it away from you because they're not making it secret. They want to slowly erode the rights in elections. They want to slowly erode the confidence in elections. Hell, I just saw I think it was a day ago, on the official White House account, because I, for some reason, still haven't unfollowed it from the days of Joe Biden. Trump posting one of his graphics with, you know, him doing his whole big boy tough stuff, with the caption saying only Americans should vote in American elections. I tell you, the comments do not disappoint. If you'd like just a good chuckle, just go look at it. Look through the comments; they don't disappoint.
They'd be funny if they weren't so sad. But you know, it's really Reece. It's not just a right that we have as Americans to vote. I think it's also a duty, and so many of us have neglected our duty to. One, to vote, but two, to be informed going into the election and know who and what we are voting for.
Yeah, and I think twofold. One, staying informed takes a lot of time. And when you're a working class person who, you know, maybe has like 1.5 jobs or 2 jobs, and you've got such limited, you know, personal time, what are you gonna want to do? Do something relaxing or keep up with the shit that is the news? And so being well informed, I think, truly is a privilege.
And well, and
Where
also
was my mind
there's
going?
a major effort to keep us misinformed.
Yes, thank you. Misinformation, and like as you mentioned, we don't go into that voting booth informed. I think it's because a lot of people don't know who to trust or what to trust. You know, um, the commander in chief has attacked all these news outlets, and that's not a small thing, right? Like, yes, it's Trump, he's a clown, but like he's still arguably the most powerful and important person in the world. And so when he's constantly degrading, CNN, the AP, the Hill, et cetera, it's like, where do I turn for good news? And to your point, I mean, there are a lot of people, I think Shabazz included, who just write clickbait rage stuff. I cannot stand that guy. I just learned about him like a month ago, 2 months ago, because of Blythe Potter.
I like
Destiny
Abdul
Wells.
personally. His content is hit and miss. I actually do have a link to a piece he wrote recently for the State House file. Again, I'll have the show notes up here on Substack a little later this afternoon. He suggests open primaries for Indiana, which I actually am in support of. But his twist is that he wants a 60% threshold where if somebody finishes with more than 60% in a primary that you forego the November election. I'm not in favor of that, but it's a fun thought exercise. I encourage people to read it. Again, I'll link that in the show notes. But so much of that, Reece, I think, goes back to a failure of civic literacy and what we learn in schools. And, but part of that is intentional. Republicans in state governments have eroded civics programs, so we don't know what's going on. So, people are ignorant and keep voting for them.
They've made civics programs like a hand
AP
grenade.
only. Yeah.
Well, no, I was going to say like a time bomb. Like, some people are just so afraid to touch it because they might get canceled, or some student's parent will find out and then their job could bitch at the school board, and then right, like it's cultural too.
It is. Let's talk about our culture of education a little bit in this state. I've got a handful of education stories pulled, but we can't necessarily talk about all of them because we're running up on time. But I did pull this one from WFIE down in Evansville, where they highlight that Indiana's property tax cuts are hurting Indiana public schools, which we all know, but they particularly highlighted East Gibson School Corporation, which is expecting to lose $400,000. Doesn't sound like a lot in the grand scheme of things, but that means they're leaving custodial positions unfulfilled. They're considering raiding the education budget to cover that. They're not replacing half of their retirees this year. The superintendent there says it's not if you're going to have a referendum, it's when. That is the only way school districts can gain the funding that they're losing from state cuts. And, this article says 30 to 45 school corporations are eyeing November referendums to ask local voters to offset those state cuts. An article from WTHR suggests that may be up to 100 districts, the Indiana Coalition for Public Education, putting that number, twice as high as that FIE article, nearly double the early estimates. This is after surveying schools statewide, with 99% of them responding that the tax cuts are already hurting them. This is at the same time where from Public News Service says that the property taxes that are driving the school funding crisis are also undercutting a path to any teacher raises. Indiana's teachers are already only earning 70 cents on a dollar earned by similarly educated professionals with a starting salary of only $45,000. Even experienced teachers are making less than $60,000. both of those are below the estimated living wage for a single adult in Indiana. Our teachers are paid less than those in the surrounding states, so you get outflow of qualified professionals, and you get this sort of downward spiral of a circle. And then you also have to worry about what the teachers, all the things they have to negotiate in the classroom. There's new rules going into effect at the beginning of the year, with a bell-to-bell cell phone ban taking effect on July 1st, with no personal wireless devices allowed during the school day, including smartwatches or gaming devices, with limited exceptions for medical needs or IEP accommodations. So theoretically, this law shifts enforcement from the teachers, taking policing students' device use out of their hands and giving it to administrators. Schools can opt to buy locking pouch systems at $15 to $30 a unit. Again, how are they going to purchase all of this additional equipment when their budgets are being cut? I don't know. Governor Braun and lawmakers signaled this may just be the start. Conversations are already underway about school-issued Chromebooks and tablets and their effects on developing brains. Reece,
Yes.
thoughts about the ban on cell phones in school? Now, I, as a parent, my daughter is graduating here in a couple weeks, so I don't have to think about this myself personally too much longer. But man, I don't know. We kind of have a school shooting problem in this country. If anything were to happen, I want to be able to get a hold of her right away. And I think that's a thing a lot of parents are concerned about. But I do see the other side. Like, you need your students to be focusing on the task at hand, and not with their face buried in their phones. What do you think? You're only a couple of years removed from this yourself. You actually grew up in the era where, everybody's got their own phones, their own devices, and you still have to navigate the learning environment. You are far more qualified to speak on this, I think, than I am.
Yeah, so I actually like to pivot a little bit and address the last point you made about the Chromebooks and tablets. I've been, not to get all philosophical, I've been doing a lot of thinking recently, because I was one of the kids who was like the first round of getting Chromebooks in the classroom. And I've been kind of pondering if maybe would have been better off without them, because I didn't come from like a sheltered household, but I guess stricter. We had computer time. Like, it wasn't I could just play on the computer whenever. I had a set amount of time that I could play every week. And you know what I did as soon as I got the Chromebook? I started playing games during school, after school, because I finally had that freedom. And so, honestly, like, I know the conversation and the story isn't about the Chromebooks and tablets. I really am not all that opposed, because I think if you did that, you could improve attention in the classroom. With phones, that's a much harder conversation, because, as you pointed out, school shootings, you'd want to be able to reach your child, or have your child be able to reach you. But again, I'm not a very anti, like, bell to bell cell phone ban, because I cannot tell you the number of times I heard the teacher say in the classroom, "Put your phone away. This is your second warning. Okay, now it's time to put it in the hanger or the basket," or whatever we had. And one, that creates a lot of strain on the teacher, because that's, as you put it, puts another thing that they have to worry about. And two, it also affects attention, because if you're, down here texting away or playing Pokemans or whatever, while the teacher's up there trying to give a lesson. You're not comprehending and digesting what they're saying. And so, like, I don't know. I think the first problem we should figure out before we're really concerned about phones in the classroom is guns in schools. I think that's the first thing we should figure out. And then we could, people would feel much more confident in or comfortable in having these bell-to-bell cell phone bans because there's not going to be the, oh no, what if little Billy is in a school shooting? But I digress.
It's a culture-wide shift that we need to make, and I do think there is legitimate reason to want to do things in an analog way. I think just that hand to paper to brain connection is a real thing that works. I mean, I feel it myself as somebody who's sort of, grew up in an analog era and has, adopted more technology over the year. Like, I don't think as well as I used to. And I do think there's really something to be said for that.
All, these damn kids these days. Some of the people I work with who are currently in high school, their handwriting, my God, it looks like mine's no, work of art, but some of theirs looks like it would come from a second or third or fourth grader, not a high schooler.
I don't want to be that old guy either who talks about they don't even teach the kids cursive these days. Like, who cares? I guess yes, but yeah, being able to write, legibly. I guess
you mentioned cursive. One of my big pet peeves when people just sign their name in fucking print. That's not a signature. You're just writing your name. Sorry.
Hot take from Reece. So, one more thing I wanted to mention. We don't have to comment on it, but I did want to make sure it goes on the record. This week in Marion County, the Indianapolis and Marion Metropolitan Police Department chief issued a video message announcing a youth curfew taking effect now that school is out there. 17-year-olds must be home by 1 a.m. on weekends and 11 p.m. during the week. 2 hours earlier for 15 and 16-year-olds. Those 14 and under need to be in by 9 p.m. 7 days a week. Chief Tanya Terry sending this video message directly to Marion County students on the last day of school, urging families to stay engaged. There's very much concern about quote unquote youth crime during the summer in Indianapolis. Specifically, the number of teenagers involved in shootings or homicides is up, even though overall violent crime is down. I guess we can debate whether or not a curfew is the best way to achieve that, or if we, need to tackle things upstream and actually give our kids, positive things to do. I don't know. Reece, quick thoughts on that?
I live in a place that's basically the exact opposite of Marion County, kind of in the middle of nowhere. And so I don't really have experience with big cities, and I kind of hate big cities. But from a layperson outside rural person's perspective, I don't see the curfew as such a bad thing. Kids really shouldn't, again, I'm gonna really sound old, but kids really don't need to be out till 4 a.m.
No, and then there are exceptions, of course, for those who are working and whatnot. It's
I think it's such a non-issue that it's important to cover, but Who cares?
We will see, I guess, come the end of the summer, when the statistics roll in, whether this was effective or not. I got our last section this week. I had a couple environmental stories I wanted to cover, particularly on data centers, which seems to come up every week. It's like there's another one popping up. We've been covering the one in Indianapolis. Well, one of several proposed in Indianapolis, but particularly the one in the Martindale-Brightwood area, which the zoning board and the full county council have given the go-ahead to. Residents there are taking the next step in pushing back and filing a legal challenge against this Metro Blocks data center scheduled to go up on North Sherman Avenue there. Again, this site has a documented history of industrial pollution. Residents are concerned about that all getting kicked up, not to mention the noise and the potential particulate matter and the water usage and the electric rate usage when this thing goes into once it's up and running. This is part of a broader pattern there. In Decatur Township in Marion County, residents there filed a similar suit to block a $4 billion Sabi Corporation data center on the southwest side. Of course, the underwriting driver of all of this construction is that the state passed a data center tax abatement in 2019, making Indiana a magnet for these type of developments, cheap land, tax breaks, communities like marginalized communities in the cities and also rural communities with less political power to push back. This week, we saw one up in your neck of the woods there in Madison County, Reece. A data center proposed there.
Just about to comment that you hadn't mentioned that one.
Yeah, the Plan Commission voting to start the petition process for a 6-month moratorium on data centers in unincorporated areas of the county there, with a public hearing on June 9th. What's triggering is that residents say Vantage is proposing a 650-acre data center there near a juvenile detention center. More than 50 people showed up to oppose it. Notably, no application has even been filed for this yet, but as you see, a lot of times with these data centers, they use a lot of back doors and obfuscation and non-disclosure agreements to get the ball rolling before residents even know what's coming.
I think, I'm generally opposed to data centers, especially, ones that are being built more for profit than anything. If say a data center was needed to upgrade the infrastructure of a hospital or of a city or something like that, something that would be for the public good, I'd totally be in support of it. Yes, there's environmental risks, but most, not to poo-poo environmentalism and environmental risks, but most actions we take have environmental risks. We have
there's trade-offs with everything.
Yeah, there's trade-off. I really haven't been following. I mean, the show notes was the only reason I learned about the data center up in Madison County. So I don't really know a whole lot. I don't know, what the planned usage of it would be. Who's even, I just
who's even intending to build that? They do.
I don't have enough information to form an informed opinion.
And I think in many ways, Reece, that's intentional. They don't want you to know who's sponsoring these things, what they plan to do with it, what the draw on the grid's going to be, how much water it's going to use. You find out all of that oftentimes when it's way too late in the process, and that's part of the problem. There's a place for these. We as a society use a lot of data. We talked about this at the top of the show with China and AI and the competition there and stuff. And there's a way you can do these things sustainably and ethically. And the problem is we're currently not doing that. We're only concerned about what is profitable. Final story, kind of along the same lines this week. It's an environmental story, but it also ties into the Indianapolis 500. The greatest
Amazing
spectacle in
headline.
racing will take place this coming Sunday. And Mirror Indy, again, had this story and bonus points to the headline writer because this story is titled IDEM, that's the Indiana Department of Environmental Management, to Speedway, you're in trouble. The town of Speedway's population explodes on race day from 14,000 to about 350,000, and all of that beer that the people there are drinking eventually ends up at the Speedway wastewater treatment plant, which has violated its state discharge permit in 7 of the last 10 years, primarily due to ammonia from urine. The plant can handle the volume. It's the chemistry that's the problem. The treatment plant is only a little over a mile from Indianapolis Motor Speedway, meaning it receives urine at maximum concentration before it has any chance to dilute. IDEM cited the city of Speedway for permit violations for each of 2022 through 2025, and the town signed a settlement. The fix is a $14 million plant upgrade starting in June, paid for by an $8 a month sewer fee increase for residents over the next 20 years. I don't know, shouldn't Penske, the owners of the Speedway, be paying for this increase? If I was a resident of Speedway, I'd be pissed.
But we need a soundboard that's got the rim shot button. I don't care. I mean, this is another I don't care about racing, so I never pay attention to this. I do care about the environment. It doesn't sound good. I mean, and I would agree with you. It sounds a little silly that the residents are having to pay for something that is coming from, or a problem that is stemming from a whole lot of outsiders coming in. Why don't they put a piss tax on the ticket sales? And that's how they fund it. I mean, I can kind of see the other side of the coin. The upgrades aren't just gonna benefit the race fans. They're gonna benefit everybody in the county or in the township or whatever. But
but would they even be necessary if not for the Speedway and this one event, this one time a year? Listen, we're being silly. This is the last story of the show, and pee jokes, right? But this does go to this is the public paying for goods that that private organizations benefit from. It's the same way that we provide tax subsidies to stadiums. It's very much the same thing. I don't know. Listen, Roger Penske, if you're listening, pay for this upgrade yourself. Reece, we have reached the end of the road here today. Unlike the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, which goes on forever, we have a
left turn.
Set
right
finish
turn.
Line. Left turn.
Left.
Yeah, turn left, Dale. So thank you for joining me here today. Where can the folks connect with you? Are you still on the social media? I know you're not gonna be campaigning further, so I don't want to point them to a campaign website. But
yeah, I'm still
gonna be doing things
on
in the community.
Socials. So it's just obviously if you want to search my name on Facebook, obviously, and then my pseudo political account is Reece, the number 4, and then Indiana. It used to be my campaign account. I'm gonna sort of slowly switch it into just sort of a general political account.
Yeah.
I have a Substack. I don't remember what it is. I haven't written for it in a while, but I have slightly been pondering bringing that back. But yeah, that's where people can find me.
Well, very good. So again, thank you, Reece, for joining me here today. And of course, folks, you can find me on Blue Sky, Instagram, and Threads at whosleft.us, and on Facebook, TikTok, and YouTube at Who's Left. Send me a DM anywhere with feedback. We have lots of stuff coming up on Progressive Indiana Network this week. As always, I'm back on Tuesday night with immigration advocate Stuart Mora. He's one of the organizers that put together this 28-city anti-ICE protest yesterday. We're going to find out all about that and what the next steps are from him. Every Thursday morning, of course, the Concerned Clergy podcast drops on Progressive Indiana Network. As I mentioned earlier with Karla, on Friday, Derek Holder will explain how the convention process works on Hold 'em Accountable. Friday, we are supposed to, originally, we were supposed to host a Secretary of State debate between Blythe Potter and Bo Bai, but Bo is very evasive and just, you can't pin him down. I don't think he actually wants to answer tough questions from the people. So we intend to at least host a town hall with Blythe Potter on Friday. Brianna Newhart, the recovered Republican, will host that. And I think she has her own content coming out Saturday, but Brianna's had a lot of family stuff to deal with lately, so she may be taking a break on that one. Everybody be sure to follow her and send her your love. She could use it right now. But for now, let me go ahead and wrap this thing up. Again, please, we can't do all of that, bring you this content without your support. Please help the Progressive Indiana Network with a paid subscription at progressiveindiana.net, and follow us on the social media sites at the full spelled out name on most of them, but on Blue Sky and TikTok, it's PIN Indiana. Please help us grow with a follow wherever you're at. Again, like, share, comment, subscribe, review. Those all helps a lot. Let us keep building a radically democratic Indiana together. Until next time, on behalf of my guests, Karla Lopez, Owens, and Reece Axel-Adams, I'm Scott Aaron Rogers. Love each other, Indiana.